Hello and welcome to part four, I think it is, of the spiritual development journey using the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life as our framework. If you have not watched the other three videos, I linked I have the video in the descriptions. Sorry. I have the link in the description below that you can go and check them out to see what this is all about. Because today, what I'm going to do is to just go through and show you how the 7 pillars of our third dimension lines up with our spiritual growth and development. So I am here in front of my altar. You guys might have seen and realized that I'm in the same area each time. I like to come here to record. It presents the light from outside, and it gives me a good natural light to do everything. And it's just really nice to be here in front of the altar. So I think this is the first time I'm like, hey, I'm gonna see what the altar is like here and the different things that are on here, the different elements for the different elements of our creation. We have represented by the fire, we have earth, we have water, and sorry, let me start that over. We have air, earth, water, and fire on the other side. With my two owls for wisdom and knowledge, and this is my ancestral gift, along with all the other stuff that I burn and my incense and stuff like that that's going on. So yeah, so that's where I do the recording, right? So today we're gonna go through the 7 pillars of our third dimension and show how it lines up with our spiritual growth and development, and at what stage you will more than likely be diving into each of the different pillars. Okay? So when we look at this spiritual growth and development, we realize we start out from age 0 all the way up to 120. And at each stage, we have different things that we go through. And that was explained in videos number 1, I think video number 2, that explained the different parts of that. So I have my notes down here. I'm just gonna slowly go through them for you. So between the ages of 0 and 12, because we are open, and remember, this is just allegorically, so this could also be your exposure to this. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are 0 to 12. It just means this is your exposure to it. And so what we're trying to do here is to the reason we have the spiritual growth and development using the allegory of age from 0 to 20 is to see if we can provide a framework and a guide for different people to say, okay, here is where I line up on my spiritual journey. Some of us get introduced and we just got pushed into a certain section. We don't even know where that section is, right? And we have some of the information and we don't have some of the information. We get into some practices and we haven't done other practices, or we get channeled into just one area because this is the one that we were told about and stuff like that. Well, this is just trying to give you general information and say, okay, so with that general information, here is the different things that you can learn to do at a different stage, right? So it's a guide, it's a roadmap, it's something that you can refer back to say, okay, what are some of the things that I can go into right now? So doesn't mean you're going to be between any of these ages physically, but we're using it as an allegorical timeline for you to go through. And if you think on number 3, um, I might have gone through the circle and to show you how it lined up and stuff like that. All right. So you're exposed to pillar number 7 and pillar number 6 between those ages. Pillar number 7 gives you the 7 Hermetic principles. And if you haven't watched the 7 pillars to our third dimension, I'll put the link in the description below. Go ahead, watch that through the whole thing. You don't have to watch it right now. You don't have to watch it before this. You can watch it afterwards, just to give you an understanding as to what the different pillars are and how these line up. Right? So you don't have to watch it right now. So pillar number 7 and pillar number 6 are universal principles. They're universal principles that tell us how things work in the cosmos, how things work within us. What are some of the things that we sort of all do without even realizing that we do them? It's really knowledge based, something that we don't need to be on this spiritual journey, but it's really an enhancement to your spiritual journey, because the 7 Hermetic principles tell us about mentalism. It tells us about law of correspondence. It tells us about the gender, the yin and the yang, cause and effect, and those things. While the other 5, not 5, sorry, the 6 universal principles go into a little bit more detail on law of attraction. I think is in that one. It also goes into universal oneness, taking inspired action, the law of relativity, and stuff like that. Those are just laws that we can find out about. And it's really good that during those early years, we start to understand what those are. So even if you can use this for a child as well. And so during those period of time, just start introducing those things to them. Okay. And especially you start introducing things like the law of attraction. You start introducing things like the law of vibration, where you allow them the capacity to go through their fairy tale imagination. You allow them the capacity to dream and bring in the vibrational universe that they are born with. That unfortunately, most of us, unfortunately, it was removed from most of us because the people we have around us didn't understand this. It wasn't their fault. I'm not blaming anyone. It's just we are now at a time period where this is coming out. And so, with my saying this, I don't want anyone to believe that, well, because they didn't know or because they raised their kids a certain way, that they actually did something wrong. We did the best we did the best we could with the information we had at the time, and myself included in raising my kids. And I can tell you that I was having a discussion where I could say that I have 2 kids, and at some point they were raised differently because of my awareness of certain things, right? But you let them understand, you let them develop. You yourself can start to do this. And so one of the first parts in tapping into our intuition, into the realm that we can't see, feel, touch, smell, taste, is by diving into our intuition, by diving into the vibration of stuff, by diving into the inspired action, the transmutation, all these different things that happen. How do we know what it is that the polarity of stuff is? What goes from one side to the next side? How do we understand gender? So between those ages, getting an introduction to it. Why can't I say that word? Introduction. Getting an introduction to it will allow us the capability to expand on that moving forward. So we learn about those two parts and we dive into it in that section. Between the next part that I believe is the four states of hell. And the four states of hell takes up a long period of time, because understanding you, the individual, understanding me, we have to go through and understand all the different parts of our mental capacity. We have to develop that. So between the ages of 12 to I think 50 is where we dive into the different parts of the four states of health. And so the four states of health has the coherent health. So the coherent health deals with the mental part of everything. That's the vibrational part. It is how do we deal with people? How do we deal with relationship, society, our ego, our emotion, our capacity to tolerate and stuff like that. We develop those and we fine tune them as we go through life. And we all know, especially if we have gone through ourselves, go through puberty, or we have gone through those, the teenage years, and then after that you develop and you start to do things on your own, and you're between 21 and you start having your own kids, or you're in different employment. You're dealing with different people, you're dealing with different things, you're dealing with different stresses of life, you're dealing with different circumstances. And so it is, to me, really important for us to have a good coherent health that we can build on. And so that's a part of the four states of health. Doesn't mean that's the first one you're going to go through, even though that's where I put it on, but it's a great one to start with. And the coherent health then ties into the terminsta that we're going to look into, because that's now, if you remember the wheel where it says using your thoughts to create your reality, the terminsta actually helps with that. So you get from the coherent health, then you go into, okay, what am I feeding myself with? And feeding yourself is feeding yourself mentally and feeding yourself physically, right? What are you feeding yourself with? And when you feed yourself with those things mentally and physically, they then transmute, they transform, they become something else. And so when you're dealing with the mental part, and you're dealing with your overall body, because as something says, your body is a temple, you're dealing with that overall basis. It is our responsibility to put in the right things into our mind and into our body. We are not the ones that is keeping us healthy, but we are the ones deciding the raw material that the body is going to use to keep it healthy. So the four states of health, and the second part is chemical health. And that chemical health deals with things that you put in your body, because we have a chemical process that's going on. The third one is called your corporeal health. And your corporeal health is your body. It requires something. You know what it requires? Movement. It doesn't have to be competitive movement. It doesn't have to be where you're going to run a marathon. It doesn't going to be where you ride 100 miles. It doesn't have to be where you're weightlifting, hundreds of pounds. But just simple spiritual movement every day. Conscious movement. Things more like, yoga and Pilates and some form of weight movement and processes that you're stretching your body and you are getting your body in shape. Because trust me, if you're going to live to 120, you're going to need this machine, which is the only one we have. I mean, I know that they're coming up with stuff where you can trade parts, right? But it's technically the only one we have. Like, what amount of parts can you trade for it to not be you anymore? But anyway, so if we want to keep ourselves intact for that period of time, then what we put inside our chemical health is important, and what we put on and what we do with it, our corporeal health, is really important. Okay. The other part of the four states of health is our currency health. And currency is everything, vibrational and physical. And this has to do with our medium of exchange as well. When we go through the 7 pillars, you'll hear me talk about medium of exchange. Right? It has to do with medium of exchange, give and take. So that's our currency. What type of currency are we giving out? Interesting thing is, currency is, money is energy. Money is currency, but money is energy. And when we think about our currency, it's really the energy that we put into different things. So what do we take in? And what do we give out? Because energetically, we're having that exchange all the time with different things, right? So it goes into the 4 states of health. And so it takes a while for us to understand, process it, maneuver through it, fine tune everything that needs to happen right there with the 4 states of health. In the meantime, we're still taking in our 5 guiding principles. Even though the 5 guiding principles is something we will dive into much later on, we're still doing that right now because we will still have to blend in unconditional love. We might not be able to do it totally. We might not understand everything that has to do with it. We might not know why on earth I'm going to give unconditional love to people who I really don't love and how that's going to work. And, this does not make any sense to me. But at some point, you will still have love for somebody. At some point, you will have maybe conditional love. And the conditional love will then move into unconditional love later on, because at some point, you'll get to understand. So we have the love. Let's say the 5 guiding principles at this point, when you're in the 4 states of health, might not be unconditional love. It's just love. Just love. Then we go choice. Realize we have choices. Okay? You have choice. I have a choice. You don't have to listen to this. You don't have to do anything I say. You can do something totally different, but we all have choices, right? Choices, until it becomes freedom of choice. Freedom of choice. Then we have action. Action is number 3. And so you go out and you say, okay, how am I going to act? Am I going to act because somebody tells me to do this? Or am I going to act because I'm taking inspired action? Am I going to act from being motivated to do it because motivation is from the outside? Or am I going to take action from having my own inspiration to do it? Am I going to have to be validated by someone before I do anything? Am I going to require that someone is going to feed me everything that I need to do? Do I need exact instruction? Someone has to say what time to wake up, what time to eat, what time to go to bed, what time to wash the dishes, what time to do whatever, right? Are my actions determined by somebody else, or am I able to take inspired action? So remember, you're going through the different parts and you're going through the different developments. And so this is how you are starting to grow and develop spiritually. And I will always say that spirituality is in everything. Spirituality is in everything. So this development you're going through, you're at the same time understanding some of the ways in which you can read these things through some of the different scriptures, right? And I love to read for me, what I call the philosophical spirituality is great in like the Hindu philosophy. It's great in the Buddha principles. It's great in like Zoroastrianism, right? And that gives you things about the cosmos, right? Taoism, it's great for that. So we are on the number 3, and action. Inspired action is also a part of the rituals. And rituals, if you want to bring rituals in there, you can use like the shamanic practices. Absolutely wonderful practices, that deals with things on the inside. And this is the difference between the mystical and the occult. I think I might bring out something on that shows that dance as well, right? And so you take inspired action. Then number 3 was do no harm. Number 3 was do no harm. So I just mixed number 3 and number 4. Then I'm going to go through number 4. So I'm going to go through the fourth one that I'm mentioning, but the fourth one that I'm mentioning is actually number 3, which is do no harm. And we understand that. We understand what it means to do no harm. We're going to go through the different levels of do no harm. And we'll understand about whether this harm is physical harm, emotional harm, financial harm, or any of those different harms that seems to come up. And slowly but surely, you won't be able to just do no harm right out the bat, right? Or right out the gate. Won't be able to do that. But as you go through and you start to hone in on it, you'll get it. This is why it is such a wide span for the 4 states of health, because the 4 states of health has that in there. Okay? Has that in there. And then number 5 is thankfulness, gratitude, and mindfulness. And this is where part of the spiritual practice comes in. Like you're going to do it every single day. And so when we look at where we are for the different parts, we realize that putting in the different practices starts from day one, right? So all 5 parts of your 5 guiding principles will intertwine in the 4 states of health. Then by the time you get to age 60, you are now fully ready to embody and embrace the things that come through the 5 guiding principles, because there are certain things you really have to shed to be at the top of your game for the 5 guiding principles. So you'll get to that point, and the 5 guiding principles, it doesn't look like it takes in a lot of years. The 5 guiding principles itself is really span about 20 years for that. But because you have been doing different things before, then this is just like fine tuning it. You've already been exposed to everything in the 5 guiding principles, and now you're embodying the whole concept and what that truly means. From here onwards, we have the 3 most important aspects of life: the 2 realities and the sovereign one. And you're just going to go from there. There's one of the 7 pillars of our 3rd dimension explains that for us. And I try not to go into too much detail with 3, 2, and 1, because if you are listening to me and trying to get this concept, that part is way out there, right? It's way out there. But I'll try to do my best to put it in a context that won't scare anybody. So the 3 most important aspects of life is 1, recognizing that we are all spiritual beings. We're all spiritual beings having a human experience. We're existing spiritually, and we're experiencing physically. This is our experience, and our thoughts turn into things, and we have our intuitions from our spirit guides that help us with understanding what we need to do, and how do we take inspired action, and how do we embody the love and stuff like that. So again, because we have gone through number 5, it will help us in being in understanding that part. So we have the first part that says we're spiritual being and understanding what's going on. But then part of that 3 is recognizing the relationship of all spiritual aspects. Recognizing the relationship of all spiritual aspects. The spiritual aspect also has physical aspects to it. Right? We have to recognize that. We have to know where we are. So it's that relationship that we have with the spiritual aspect of life. Then the third one is the medium of exchange. Because if we have spiritual reality, we have the relationship, then the medium of exchange is what deals with that relationship. What's the give and take? How do you go back and forth? How do we ensure that we vibrate a certain way, right? And so within that section, you're now ready to just embody, not just, well, by the time you get there, you're not even identifying with self anymore. The Buddha, yeah, the Buddha is the one that says self is an illusion. So the Buddha says self is an illusion, and physicist says time is a prison. So if self is an illusion, and you don't even know who yourself is, and time is a prison, and they're just bringing us along with it, then we are in an elusive prison, right? And some of those things that we're going to try to clear up and let you understand how to decipher, right? How to decipher what that prison is, and is that prison real? So, but you have to get to that level to start diving into it. And then you have the 2 realities. The 2 realities, simple. It's a vibrational reality and a physical reality, right? That's it. Vibrational reality, physical reality. Female, feminine principle, masculine principle. Okay, the yin and the yang, they come together in a certain way, and both together have creation, and that creation births everything below it. You can go into the different parts. You can hear about Sophia and all the other stuff that's going on there, and yeah, it's it gets really really interesting and wild depending on your take on it. And above that, we have the sovereign one. Above the sovereign one is the absolute. So the absolute is in the Gnostic text that adds this to it. That's a part of the Kabbalah. And the really interesting thing is that the 3 right there that has the 2 realities and the sovereign one has it where you have the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, Shiva, Krishna, and I forget what the other one is. But in one of my videos, I did explain that the triangle of life. That's right there, and so that takes you into really you transcending into a spiritual being and completing your age till 120. And when you're done and you're at 120, you have the wheel of time, the wheel of existence, the wheel of experience. And within that wheel, it says, what have you learned? What have you learned going through this time, experience, existence? And based on where you are, will determine how do you come back and what are some of the things that you'll need to remember. Now you're going to cross the line of forgetfulness. At age 120, when we're done with one, going into the other, we're going to start over at 0. We cross the line of forgetfulness, and some information gets bleed through. Some things get transferred over. And what transfers over most of the time is what was our passion? What were the things that we love? What are the things that gets us excited? What are the things that will help humanity at the other time? And we can go into multiple different ways as to how that transfer takes place, whether it's a choice, whether it's something that you say, okay, which timeline you want to be in, or you didn't have a choice and there's no such thing as free will, and all these different things. The interesting thing is like all these different themes are played out, and every one of us go through the different things. But we definitely are going to cross that line of forgetfulness, with some remembering more than others. In between the line of forgetfulness starting at east before we get to the south, we will start to remember. And so a lot of us might be in that section where we're remembering. So the 7 principles, the 7 pillars, lining up with our spiritual growth and development takes that stage. And so we go through from understanding 7 and 6 when we are much younger, jumping into 4 while we are from 12, I think, to all the way up to like age 50. Then from that point, going into understanding more about the 5 guiding principles. Remember, we will learn. So we'll still have every single one of them through the entire stage, just how much of it we're going to go into and how deep we're going to go into a particular one, right? And even if you are right now, if you're starting out, and let's say that you're 12 years old or 10 years old, right? You are learning about the sovereign one. You might not understand it fully. You might not know exactly what that's all about, or being able to really compartmentalize what the heck that means. But you're being introduced to it. Now, by the time you get to 100, 110, 120, it's no longer an introduction. It's a full-fledged immersion, right, into it. And so that's how it works. That's the structure that we have. So I'm going to stop for now. I think that's all I want to say on this. Thank you very much for joining the journey. So hey, come along, join the journey, participate in the journey, like, comment, subscribe, share. If you found any value in this whatsoever, do one of those or multiple. That would be really appreciated. And let me know some of the things that you are, some of the questions you have, and what challenges you're experiencing as you go through this. So until next time you come back and see me, you take care and goodbye.